Good evening, friends. Thanks for your presence today. Today we will discuss about tea leadership. Primarily, a tea leader is a person who is an expert in his function and has sympathy or empathy in other functions of the business. Let us see if such things are not there, such empathy is not there, what is going to happen. Say, for example, if a person is a person in charge of sales, he always thinks that he should be in a position to provide what the customer wants. The customer is asking for 100 units per week. He is asking his manufacturing to supply 100 units per week, but he says the MOQ is 1,000 units. And he is having a problem. Similarly, when you look at the manufacturing, he says, I have done a lot of work to arrive at this and I'm continuously trying to reduce this 1,000 units per week. These people don't understand. They keep on sending me orders for 1,000 units. How can I make sense with these fellows? This is the problem that manufacturing faces. Whereas, if you look at, they say to the finance that we are going in for a lot of work on SMED and they need a lot of investment. The finance guy says, boss, by SMED, what is that he is going to gain? He is saving some additional hours of production and he is manufacturing more and more and keeping it in stock. Where is the need for it? Now, if you look at from individually each one of them, they are all good in whatever they are telling. But is it good for the company? Why is a problem? So let us look at how these issues can be resolved, how there can be a common understanding that we brought on to the people. This is what a tea leader should have. Now, let's look at Hari, who take us through the entire thing, how we look at tea leadership and how we will, how this will help people in understanding the business. Over to Hari.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Thank you so much. Please allow me to share the screen.
नहीं कुछ नहीं होता है लाओ ना
Please allow me to share the screen.
Hello. Hello, Hari.
Yeah. Thank you. So as is the new normal now, the first words are not going to be good evening or something. Am I visible? Am I audible? Is the screen visible? Okay. And now formally, good evening all. So we will have a three-way communication. One is going to be the communication through the audio visual, which is going to be the video and the PowerPoint presentation. Second is going to be, you can unmute yourself and then you can talk any questions. You can stop in the middle. I want to keep it more conversation rather than a monologue. And the third and the most powerful kind of communication is going to be a chat box. Chat box is going to tell that we are there and we are not simply there, but definitely there. So whenever I ask a question, feel free to type in the chat box so that it becomes easier for us to carry this forward. Okay. So what is this? What's worth to be a tea leader? So what is the tea leader? Is it transformational leader? No, it is not transformational leader. Tea leader simply is a leader who is a tea guy, letter T. So almost, please keep the audio mute. Please keep the audio mute and open when it is required. Okay. Yeah. So when it comes to leadership journey, it's a pretty long journey. In fact, you start from a management trainee or a graduate engineering trainee and move up the ladder, become a CEO, become a COO, or become another, so what you call a kind of a section head. From there, you move towards a production head. From there, you become a COO, then you become a CEO. And inshallah, you get to the board as well. Or the other journey is I joined as a management trainee. I do some accounting work. I was in the internal audit. Normally, any chartered account is taken to internal audit department first. सबसे पंगा लेता है उसके बाद कैसा जाऊं ऊपर. Okay. So typically you get into kind of a role there. Then from there you move to corporate finance, from corporate finance to CFO to CEO, and go so on and so forth. So normally if you look at, normally a journey goes through this level. But there are some companies which are extremely sensible. Some companies like Unilever, who typically rotate their people around. So you find somebody like a Mansukani who is not a HR person in HR. So you find somebody who is an accountant who is there as a head of sales as well. And you find even R&D guys getting into leadership position in that company. A rarity. So normally R&D guys rarely land up beyond the R&D head level, GM R&D. So there are companies like that. There are companies like L&T which do it. There are companies which actually successfully do it over years. But the cases are few and far in between, I would say. So what typically happens is when I join an organization, I'm absolutely out there to prove myself. I'm just out of the college. I joined the company with an evangelical fervor to change everything which I see. I come and preach and then try to change everything on the way. And I have to prove myself extremely well. So I get into a phenomenal kind of a functional expertise over a period of time. In the process, I tend to lose track of what's happening in the other functions and how the other functions are impacting me. So for a leader to be effective, he has to be a team leader. He has to essentially have a perspective which is beyond his domain perspective. So how I divided the whole discussion here, whole conversation is into broadly 5 parts. I have divided this conversation. The first part is going to be sowing the seed. How do we typically get into a company? And then I will not be spending naturally much time on that. How do we get into a company and how we are out there to prove ourselves. Then from there we move towards a journey. I call it as a journey of myopia. A journey of myopia because myopia is being myopic is short-sightedness. I develop a lot of specific skills. I focus a lot on my functional expertise and I absolutely strictly follow my KPI. Then from there I move towards going up the ladder. I get up the hierarchy, go up the hierarchy. I get good exposure. Sometimes I get exposed as well. Am I correct? So my lack of leadership skills gets exposed. So whether I'm getting an exposure or whether I'm getting exposed purely depends upon how he is going up the ladder. Therefore, it is critical what is this T leadership. We are using something called as a correlate, integrate and align, CIA. Not Central Investigation Agency, it is correlate, integrate and align. And finally, what is that framework? How do we look at a framework of journey of T leadership? We'll be spending a lot of time in the 4th and 5th part of it. The first 3 will go a little bit in a jiffy. Okay, unless you definitely stop me in the way and then you can definitely ask questions. Is that fine? Are you okay? You can type yes there so that I know that everybody is in sync with what we're discussing. Okay, you can keep typing in the chat box. It's the easiest way to be focused on this one. Okay, so let us start with go back to your own career and look at what you did when you joined the company as well. So typically when you joined the company in the first day, first show, HR department takes you through the whole journey of what it is. You fill up a lot of forms. You get into your ID card. You get your what you call desk. Depending upon your age, if you're young enough, you may be getting a laptop as well, or you may get a mobile phone as well these days. So all those stuff, SIM card you get, so many things you get on day one. Then you move on to some kind of an induction program where you are taken through multiple departments. Initially, we show a lot of attention, and then after some time, we start focusing on our function. So in the induction program also, we give special attention to the topic which is related to us, because I have to prove myself to be worthwhile joining this company. Okay, this is only a joke I'm telling you not, so don't take it seriously. Okay, so this is primarily to say sometimes even that basic skill at times may get lost in the process. No, I'm not telling that every company does it. But the fact is many companies definitely focus on making you skillful in your job. Okay, this happens in some companies. But in most of the companies, normally they are pretty focused on the job. So we start focusing on the job on hand. We learn the intricacies. We go up the ladder. We may be joining a sales and marketing function, or an R&D function, or operations function, or maybe sourcing and procurement, human resources, or IT, or administration, or even finance function. I start showing my expertise. I showing my mettle there. I learned the nuances. I start realizing that what I learned in a business school is not exactly happening here. Okay, or something else is happening there. I start realizing how is it important to be proving myself to my bosses. Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder, performance lies in the eyes of the superior. So I have to essentially focus well on the job on hand. I start focusing on, if I'm in sales, I start getting more and more sales. I'm a successful salesman if I'm getting more orders. I'm in production, I'm able to get the material production through my gate. I'm absolutely successful. I'm in maintenance, I ensure that the maintenance is taken care of very well. I'm absolutely successful. So my whole success is driven primarily by how well I'm in a position to take care of my specific function. Over a period of time, I start focusing on more than the organization, I start focusing on the function. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are able to hear. Only Subhash is having some problem.
It's clear. Voice is very clear. Yeah, audible.
Okay. Yeah. Subhash? Okay. So, I start getting into real expertise. I start focusing on what is critical for me is more of my KPIs. No, I'm not against KPI. I make it very clear. I start focusing on my KPI. I have to essentially fulfill my KPIs. And if I'm a sales guy, I have to get my top line through. If I'm in what do you call my operations, if I'm in manufacturing, I should get my costs down. If I'm in procurement or sourcing, I should ensure I squeeze that every penny out of my supplier. I'm in HR, I take care of what you call my training needs. So we start focusing on our individual expertise over a period of time. The system takes precedence over purpose. Quite some years back, somewhere in 1996-97, early days of our career in Mumbai, I was trying to establish myself in training programs and all. One company approached me and asked me that, oh, you conduct training program? Yes, sir, I conduct training program. What topic? I do program on costing, finance, operations, like this. Costing. Oh, you take sessions on costing? Yeah, I take session on costing. Can you do a session for 3 days on costing? I said, yeah, 3 days to 30 days, non-stop nonsense I can do. That is not a big deal. Tell me what do you want? Who are the audience? Who are the participants? Don't worry about that. I will have people in the audience. What? Yeah, I will have around 70 people in the audience. I said, no, sir, 70 is too much, sir. Don't worry, I will pay you extra for that, for your fatigue allowance also. I had 70 people sitting in the audience. I was conducting a training program on cost management. I had a DGM who is about to retire and a librarian who just joined about a few months back and a graduate engineering trainee and a supervisor also. That's a kind of a heterogeneous mix I had in the audience. Then I realized the reason why they want to conduct the training program is because they have a KPI called number of training days, which is actually more important than what the trainer is ultimately giving. Again, I repeat, it doesn't happen every time, but at times the system takes precedence over the purpose. We have nurses waking up the patient. Hey, patient, please wake up. You have to take the sleeping pill and sleep. Please take the sleeping pill and sleep. So we have nurses waking up patients in organization as we start focusing more on the function. Logic is very simple. Why does it happen? I am Hari. I was a potter. So when I was a potter, I was an individual. Okay. And I'm an individual. I don't have any problem at all. I was very clear about what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to make a kind of a pot. I get orders from the neighborhood. They come and place the order. I identify the take the right clay for them and make the pot and give it to them. They give me money. I give some money to my wife. I keep the balance money for buying clay. I keep the balance money for buying another potter's wheel. I start doing like this. Things were very comfortable, no confusion. But I have to grow. My business has to grow. So I started thinking big. So from Hari the potter, I turned out to be Hari Potter Incorporated with a large pot. So I divided my company into parts. I had multiple companies, multiple functions. I divided each function and then gave a KPI for each of them and say, hey guys, you take care of your KPI. Therefore, my goal will be achieved. So as the organization grows further, I realized after some time that people are absolutely focusing on their KPIs, but somehow or other my goal is getting misplaced. I could motivate that guy in the procurement that I have to make profit ultimately. I cannot go and motivate the guy in the administration that the customer is very important. Okay, so the question here is that everybody start focusing on their KPI and the overall goal gets misplaced. Then we move on to a journey of myopia. What is this journey of myopia we talk about? Just have a look at this cartoon. It talks volumes about that myopia. What am I trying to convey here? What am I trying to convey here? Please, you can type down also, or you can open up and speak as well.
Too much micromanagement?
Too much micromanagement, and my performance measurement at such a short intervals as well. Am I correct?
Yeah.
And as you see in most of the organization, we start looking at the quarterly performance as a sacrosanct thing, or a monthly performance as sacrosanct, and we start looking at that as a critical parameter. I am reminded of this dolphin in Singapore Zoo. In Singapore, if you go to that lagoon, you find this dolphin. So this dolphin comes and does all the exercise, all the fun activities there. At the end of the whole thing, the caretaker gives the dolphin a fish. So happy, it quacks and goes back, flaps and goes back. So I do the same thing to most of the managers. Hey, if you do well, you will get this. If you don't do well, you are not going to get this. If you do well this quarter, you will get this. If you do well this month, you will get this. If I'm going to pay my top managers a variable pay based on my profit, don't expect the top managers to take any strong long-term decision. It's very difficult. Now, I'm not telling variable pay is bad, but variable pay at a very high level can have a counterproductive kind of a reaction as well. Are we developing leaders or are we developing dolphin managers? It's a question which every one of us have to ask ourselves. And the biggest role KPIs and the performance metrics plays here is something humongous. Over a period of time, what happens is we start accumulating sins. This is one of the most favorite statement for me, accumulating sins. I take classes for executive MBA program in a few business schools. One of the definite assignments I give for this executive MBA guys is that, tell me what is a sin you have done in your career. Sin meaning, I did something which is good for my department, but bad for some other department or for the organization as a whole. But not done deliberately, but done as a routine. In fact, I distinctly remember one of my students, his name is Narajan from Tata Motors. He said that, sir, I've been working for 15 years in Tata Motors. How many pages do you want? Okay, as an example, I took Natarajan's name. Okay, this is what everybody asks. Okay, how many pages do you want? That's what we have been doing. We have been accumulating sins for so many years. The sins like, look at this cartoon here again. I will not allow you inside my territory. And performance within this particular silo is going to be based on how well I'm able to protect this particular silo. If that is going to be the focus, how do I develop T leaders? How do I develop leaders? Am I correct? Let us look at this carefully. How do we define, somebody is opening up. How do we define our product? R&D says it's a full-fat yogurt in 2.25 ounce tube. That's defined by agency as it's a benign rebellion. Whereas marketing says it's a 10% share. Operations says it is a 50,000 cases per month. I get my production through. Finance says it's a cash cow. Legal says it's an accident waiting to happen. And leadership says it's an example of superior innovation, sitting in an ivory tower. And the poor customer, I don't know, it's whatever in the fridge. So typically, if you look at it, as we go further and further up the organization, there is a tendency for us to get quite myopic about what's happening in our organization. There are a few typical statements you listen in organizations. Just see whether you can connect with these statements. If you want to open up and give some examples, I'll be welcome. You're always welcome. At times, a pang of guilt, sense of guilt, asking someone else to do it. This job, I have to do it. I don't want to give it to anybody. You ask politically correct statement, everybody will say, I delegate work. Do we really delegate work? Do you really say that, okay, you do it totally. I'm not going to even look at it now. You do it. No, I'm not telling be blind to that. But the point is, are we giving that, creating the space for others to grow? We get a guilty feeling. Hey, why should he do it here? I think I should do it myself. supremely confident I can do it much better. How often we hear this? I have one of my clients, whenever I call you, I normally message people and then give a call. I never give a call directly. When I messaged him, hey, can we talk now? I'm in a meeting. Hey, can I talk now? I'm in a meeting. At least around 17 to 18 messages I got as I am in a meeting for 3 to 4 days. I absolutely sent the whole thing to him and said, boss, what are you doing actually here? Okay. Yeah. Surya, can you elaborate that a bit?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
I meant to say Macbeth felt guilty the time he was killing King Duncan.
Yeah.
Then afterwards he went on a killing spree and he never felt guilty about it.
Okay.
So the first time the sense of guilt is there that, I should have done it in order to pass the buck. I palmed it off to someone else. But then as the day goes, we feel that last time I have passed the buck and successfully not got caught in the melee. So I think that's a safe thing to do. And then if I have to grow, I better not grease my palms in any way. I have to keep my hands
other
clean.
way around, right? Okay.
Yeah,
So-
yes, sir.
Okay. I don't have time is another popular refrain. I'm very clear about ensuring compliance. System is very important for me. I can't change it even for a minute. I work for 14 hours a day. Sometimes what happens when you go up the ladder, I go from one level to other level. I suddenly feel a vacuum. I was not doing what I was doing earlier. I start spending more time. I start extending my day. So typically, in fact, my friend Suhas Bakshi always says, in fact, when people move from a sales level to a regional sales manager level, he calls the regional sales managers as discount managers. Discount managers means they step in to give a discount. Okay, so typically they start expanding their horizon, not in terms of horizontally across organization, but more focused on what they are doing and more focused on the departmental centric. I prefer something which is not things to be certain. Don't tweak the things which are going on very well. I am fulfilled with the perfect week. What is a perfect week? All dispatches made, no breakdown happened, everybody came to the office, things were going smoothly. It was a perfect week. If you are a leader, that is not a perfect week.
Sir, can I interrupt?
Please.
Sir, I have a different take on this 14 hours a day. I mean to say more work hours per day. Typically, when we change from one charge to the other, there will be some sort of unlearning, relearning required. So in the initial period till we get used to the new workload, I think it may be required.
Possible, but the point is after some time it become a part of your system, right?
No. It's only like the moment, it's all a part of how long you take for the learning curve, sir. The moment the learning curve takes off, then you will have your free time as usual. You can get back home on time.
You are a sensible leader.
Thank you, sir.
So because most often what happens is I get into the same guilt and start extending my work time also. See, how many times you hear this conversation? See, I don't want to go up because I don't want to take up more responsibility. Have you heard this?
No, sir. Please come again. I didn't get it.
I don't want to take it up because I don't want to take up more responsibility. Especially you'll find this in banks.
Oh, this is news to me, sir.
Many people try to stick to a particular level, not going for this. Okay.
We do find such people in government also, sir. They do not want to become officers because that involves more responsibility.
Responsibility is more. That's one part of it. How many times you hear people at home talking about this? See, so long as he was the officer, he was coming on time. Now that he became manager, he is taking long time. Have you seen that? You look at your neighborhood. Look at your friend circle.
Oh, I'll observe from today onwards.
Please observe.
Yes, sir.
How many times the pride? The Navaratri season is starting now, right? People will be coming home.
It's
Sorry,
gets
sir? Not yet.
become so fashionable nowadays.
Yeah, pardon?
Guess it's become fashionable nowadays to say like that 14 hours of work, 16 hours of work.
Yeah.
But I really wonder, do you have such an energy level and concentration to work 14 hours?
No
don't
way,
think so.
no way, no way, no way, no way.
4 to 6 hours of concentration, another 2 hours of managing and coordinating things. That's all. Maximum 9 hours. After that,
I will
it's
come to
also-
what do we do later. Okay, that's also important.
more than 9 hours, it's just dragging it. I don't think so. Anybody can work for so long.
Yeah. Okay. I'll come to that as to how do we actually spend time, right? No one takes ownership. It's a complaint we make. Am I correct? When we go up the ladder, we take this complaint. No one takes ownership. Yeah. Nobody is taking ownership. Therefore, I'm not delegating to anybody else. So I have to do it myself. Wait, ma'am, I'm not telling everybody does it, but you will find this normally happening in non-leaders who have gone up to leadership position.
Naturally, we have more salary in their country.
Exactly. Fixing problems is fulfilling. Other day, quite some years back, I was in a plant visit with a owner. Yeah, sorry, please go ahead. Or you just hold on, we'll get into the, what do you call, questions in the end also, okay? I was going in the plant visit, I suddenly found a owner who was coming with me in the plant visit. One machine broke down. Two mechanics were trying to repair it. And this guy immediately took the gloves, took the helmet and everything and started getting into repairing it. And he repaired it successfully in a short span of time. And he was so thrilled and pleased. Maja aaya aaj. If somebody is getting maja from that, that's not leadership. Operating a layer beneath. This again I find in many of the organizations. When people go up the ladder, they tend to work a layer beneath also at times. Meaning I still continue to do the job which I was doing earlier. I don't let go that. I'm working hard, but I don't find any change in the organization. I'm working very hard. So you find generally a tendency, I'm talking about, please look at carefully friends. I'm looking at people who are having a myopic view of their functional expertise, going up the ladder and finding it difficult to let go, you'll find this kind of reactions. And very, very important, two more, the last two one, NIMBY. NIMBY is not in my backyard. ये मेरा काम नहीं है, उनका काम है. How many times you find this happening in organization? How many times you find you have to go to arbitrator? Typically, the manager becomes an arbitrator for setting the score between two departments. We were in a typical example in a steel plant. There is a process called ladle and there is a process called continuous caster. From the ladle, I get the molten metal. It is cast into a slab in a continuous casting machine. And there is a problem called ladle choke. Ladle choke means when the ladle waits for a little bit longer, it chokes a little bit and it solidifies. You have to remove it with some great effort. Ladle head was telling ladle choke is a problem of caster. Caster was telling ladle choke is a problem of ladle. After some time, the company decided to merge these two departments with a single manager. And this was the biggest pain throughout happening, that when these two guys started fighting with each other. It's not in my area, it's not in your area. And the final one, you always see that is what is called a CYA, cover your you know what. I don't want to expose my rear for this. So all these things typically, if you look at it, are primarily typical myopic syndrome. Please look at carefully. A syndrome doesn't have, not everybody has a syndrome. I'm making it very clear. A good leadership quality, a person with a good leadership quality may not have these syndromes. But these are all symptoms for somebody who is not having a good leadership quality, but who is a phenomenally great functional expert. Persistence.
You can say it's like more for a managers.
Yes. More of a manager. He's not a leader anymore.
Yes.
He's not a leader anymore.
It's a rare commodity. You have to acquire it. Yeah.
So persistence, tough-mindedness, hard work, intelligence, analytical ability, tolerance, goodwill, these are all good words for managers, not for leaders necessarily. Leader has to be gutsy to take risk. We'll come to that. So what typically happens when I go up the ladder? My functional expertise gets imprinted in my brain. When I go up the ladder, it is always a checkered growth. Typically, I get a struggle at times to go up the ladder. Even when I go up, at times I get blindsided. If you look at this chashma, it is having one side blindsided. Have you seen that? One is open, one side is closed. I tend to look at all the problem from my original expertise perspective. Please look back at your career. For some time you would have struggled. If you are smart enough, you would have come out of it. If you look at some of these people whom you're seeing struggling, you will see this particular typical problem. They get blindsided because they originally have a skill and they carry that particular skill to the next level. They not only carry the skill to the next level, they also carry the baggage to the next level, which is typically what is called as a cognitive bias. A cognitive bias of carrying the traits of the functional expertise. This is typically a big challenge what you find in organization. Then how do we go up now? I repeat, not everybody is myopic, but many are myopic. It's very difficult to find good leaders. I find a lot of managers in organizations. That's 30 years of my consulting experience. I find a lot of amazing managers, but are they really cut out to be leaders? Not all of them are. When you get into this, how do we get up the leader? Get up the whole career of leadership. It's more by choice. If we don't need to do it, if we don't want to. Are we reluctant leaders? Comfortable managers? There are two ways we take somebody up the ladder. When you go up the ladder, especially leadership position. Number one, identified attitude. Normally you do a 360-degree assessment of a potential leader by peers, subordinates, bosses. 9 out of 10 times, people are correct in their judgment in this case. 9 out of 10 times, definitely people are correct in their judgment. I don't find this much flaw in this one. Maybe if you are a HR professional, you might have found some flaw in this as well, quite possible. But there is another critical thing which is important for a leader is you should be a functionally high performer. Functional high performance is a prerequisite. Exemplary performance, the current domain of expertise, is critical for a leader to go up the ladder. Am I correct? So when the exemplary performance of the current domain is not there, even if you find some leadership quality in him, he will not be there. For example, I'm a cricket player. I'm supposed to be a batsman. I don't do good batting, but I have leadership quality. Not everybody is a Mike Bradley to be in the team forever. Am I correct? Mike Bradley is an exception than a rule. Even Mike Bradley is a decent bat. He's not a great batsman. Unless you are a player in the first place, you are not going to be there as a leader. You cannot have a non-playing captain. Am I correct? So functional high performance is a prerequisite for going up the ladder. And that's where the catch is. What is the catch? The catch is what is called as Peter Principle. Lawrence Peter is a person who came up with this Peter Principle. It's a very powerful principle. He came up with this principle somewhere in 1950s. He said, in every hierarchy, people tend to rise to the level of incompetence. Let us take an example. What do I mean by this? Say, for example, I am an employee. Jay is another employee. Subhash Penke is a third employee. 3 of us are working in a department. Okay? My boss is Natarajan. I am a pathetic worker. I don't do well at all. I'm not doing the job properly. Jay and Subhash are doing the job very well. Definitely I will not be promoted. Either I'll be chucked out or I may be remaining at that level. Now Jay and Subhash Penke are going to be promoted to the next level. When they go to the next level, there you find Jay is not doing well, but Subhash is doing very well. And Subhash gets promoted, Jay remains at that level. And Subhash goes up to the next level, he will go up till he reaches the level of his incompetence. So typically, if you look at an organization, it's a very interesting perspective. Employees rise to their level of incompetence as you go up the ladder. Because going up the level of your organization ladder, the prerequisite is a functional performance at that level. And therefore, that second aspect of functional performance, exemplary functional performance, is critical for a promotion. More so than the leadership qualities you identify in that person. Right? So look at this carefully. Yeah, sorry.
Just in the previous slide, when we talk about employees rise to the level of actually your co-workers' incompetence, right? Because as compared to my co-worker, I am rather he's incompetent and hence I get promoted. I mean,
Possible. But of the two, you are better.
yeah,
And you go up. So look at the co-worker is going to remain at that level. Am I correct? See, Jay and I are co-workers. Am I correct? Shriram. Jay, Subhash, Hari are the three workers. Of the three, who is incompetent? Hari is incompetent, right?
right.
Therefore, of the three, who is likely to get promoted? Jay and Subhash. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then they go up the ladder further and further. At a particular level, between Jay and Subhash, Jay is incompetent, Subhash is competent, reasonably competent. Who will get promoted?
The one who is competent.
Competent.
Yeah.
So where Jay will remain?
Yeah, where he is currently.
Incompetent. Where he is incompetent.
Okay.
It's a very interesting perspective. In fact, he has written 3 books actually. Peter Principle, Peter Prescription, Peter Pyramid. If you can lay your hand on it, please have a look at that. It's a phenomenal book on HR. It's a very interesting perspective. Am I correct? So typically that functional expertise is a critical requirement for somebody to go up the ladder. Am I correct? Shriram? But what you have to remember is skills and mindset that make a great engineer are not necessarily transferable to leading people, which is very crucial. Okay. So what is this T leadership? It's a very interesting picture I have used here. If you look at this picture carefully, it is having a red color which spreads a little bit up to the top. Am I correct? And there is a blue color which is there almost fully at the top of the T. And it is having some kind of a presence here also. Okay. Sandesh, I will answer your question later. Is that okay? Okay. So if you look at this particular picture, what I'm trying to convey is something very specific. When you are becoming a leader, your functional expertise is definitely a critical thing. But when you're going up the ladder, when you're acquiring your functional expertise, it is important for you to develop an expertise in other areas as well and have a clarity about other areas as well. So T leadership essentially talks about how you are going to create a change you believe in. And for you to create the change you believe in, we start our life in the vertical of T. I joined the company as a management trainee, engineer trainee. I'm a chartered accountant. I joined the internal audit department. Start gaining the expertise in that. I moved to accounts. I moved to corporate finance. I start acquiring my skills as a great finance guy. When I'm developing the skills, when I go up the ladder and reach a leadership position, it becomes more of a man management rather than simplistically functional management. Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute, please. Okay. Yeah. So when I go up the ladder, typically I develop my expertise as a functional expert, which is very, very crucial. But the being at the T level, at the top level, is primarily a little bit challenging because leadership is at the top of the T. What is this top of the T? The top of the T fundamentally is your broad skills, broadening my leadership skills. What does it mean? There are 3 specific things which are required for that. The first one is how my function interfaces with other functions. If I am an operations person, let us say I'm hardcore example I'll take. I am a production person. When I'm in production, I have to ensure that my production capacity is fully utilized, my productivity is at the highest, and I'm producing good quality product. And if I have to utilize my capacity fully, I should ensure that I should keep the changeovers to minimum. I should keep the breaks down to minimum. Am I correct? So when I'm doing that, when I'm trying to keep my changeover to minimum, in the first 3 weeks, there is a every company has got a department called PPC. PPC is what? What is PPC? What is PPC?
Production planning and control.
Please compromise department.
Okay.
Okay. They ask the production guy, please compromise, why don't you change over? But production says, no, I'm not going to change over here. I want to ensure that my changeovers are minimum. But the same production guy will do multiple changeovers in the last 1 week. Have you seen that happening? Number of changeovers in the first 3 weeks or the number of changeovers in the last 1 week. So here I start focusing on my function more. I'm not fully appreciating the interface I have with the other functions. I'm a maintenance person. I walked into the shop floor. I tell the guy, boss, I have to do the maintenance. Do I immediately allow him to do the maintenance? Or I tell him, wait, I have to get my production through, you come later. Am I correct? So unless I develop that interface very clearly with the functions, it is very difficult to develop the T leadership mindset. So how my function interfaces with other function? Who is my supplier function? Who is my customer function? And how do I interact with those functions? This is point number 1. Point number 2. How I align myself to the customer requirement. How my function is critical for the customer. How many times I start thinking about customer? How many times I start thinking about the customer need? Politically correct statement, yes, I look at customer need. But how many times we say a particular senior management intervention is required for getting an order through? What times? Does it act seamlessly without any problem in the organization? Everything is going as per the customer requirement. How many times you find this happening when I'm not able to understand how do I impact my customer? See, at least in the case of manufacturing, you've got an insulation call inventory. But in service operations, there is no insulation at all. Directly impacting. And the third critical question which I have to answer for becoming a T leader is how my functions impact the profitability. It's a very critical aspect. For every action, there is a financial reaction. How do I understand the impact of my actions, my operations in the profitability of the organization? Let us look at a few minutes on this one. How many times the salesman is clear about the profit he makes from a customer? We were doing a work in a company which is in Dubai, one of the leading company in packing material. The problem that particular company posed to us is our sales is improving. They are the pioneers in packing material in Dubai. Our sales is going up, but our profitability is coming down. When we went into the detailing as to what exactly is happening is, as a salesman, I am focusing more on getting this top line through. It's a B2B business. At the drop of the hat, they were giving discounts. When we did a detailed analysis, financial understanding, we realized there are 257 customers the company had. 257 customers giving a profit of 4.5 million dirham on a sale of 45 million dirham. Look at the numbers carefully. 45 million dirham sales, 4.5 million dirham profit. The top 28 customers, I'm telling the exact number, top 28 customers occupied around 26.9 million sales. And 4.9 out of 4.9 million profit, 4.5 came from these 28 customers. In fact, the profitable customers gave a profit of 6.4 million. Loss-making customers took away around 1.9 million, which resulted in around approximately 4.5 to 4.7 or 4.9 profit. There were more loss-making customers than profit-making customers. When we put up the numbers, it was a shock. For one simple reason, salesman is not even aware of the kind of loss these customers are bringing in. You go to shop floor. From there, from sales, you go to what you call manufacturing. A manufacturing person, ideally speaking, I want to do TPM. I'm doing TPM, total productive maintenance. I'm going to an autonomous maintenance. Ideally speaking, I should do autonomous maintenance in my bottleneck machine. So I come and tell the guy in the shop floor, boss, bottleneck machine, you give it to me for one shift in a month, in a week. I want to train the people on autonomous maintenance in that particular mission. No. Don't test the bottleneck mission. Try your TPM in another mission. A good company like TVS will never do this. But many companies who are claiming to be TPM companies are doing this. I do TPM in a non-bottleneck mission. What's the point? Operation success, patient died. So how my action is going to impact my customer, how my action impacts other functions, how my action impacts the profitability. These three are the critical ingredients for somebody to become a team leader. So what is the journey? For that, let us look at what typically an organization should look at. Any organization is an alignment. There is a purpose what you're trying to fulfill. Your processes has to be aligned to the purpose. And if I am the person working in the company, I have only 3 jobs to do. Job number 1, I have to align myself to the purpose. Do we have a line of visibility towards that purpose? Is my line of visibility that purpose, or the line of visibility is my KPI? My line of visibility will definitely be the KPI. But consciously, I should look at the line of visibility towards that purpose also. Very difficult. Number 2, I have to align my process to purpose. I have to align my process to purpose. What do I mean by align my process to purpose? We are currently doing a consulting for a company which is into flexible intermediate bulk container, FIBC, polybags. By the very nature of the business, that company has got a huge amount of variety of orders. The kind of bag I do now is not required tomorrow. But it takes enormous effort for communicating to the person at the shop floor that changeover time is very important for it to reduce it. Because if changeover time is longer, you tend to take up larger orders. And larger orders is not going to be viable for you. Unless I align my process to my purpose, I'll end up creating inventory. I will end up creating losses. And third, and the most critical, I have to align myself to the process. Typically, in most of the organization, this definitely happens when I join the organization. But the other 2 is what we have to keep looking at it. If all these 3 things happen, then I can link myself to the prosperity. This is not my perspective. This is Omac's perspective. So aligning the people to process to purpose to prosper. So if I am in an organization, my mindset has to be very clear about how do my function impact other functions, how do my function impacts the customer, how my function impact my profitability. And any improvement I do has to essentially go through 3 stages. So what do I do in the organization? Yes, into 3 aspects. Anything I do, I have to do it consistently, which is very critical for somebody who is a manager. I have to maintain what I do. Stability is important. I'm not telling the stability is not important. As a manager, I should ensure stability happens. And I have to keep improving incrementally. So incremental improvement is also critical for me. But if I have to really think beyond, I have to close these 2 eyes and open the 3rd eye, which is primarily my breakthrough. So if I look at my overall picture, any organization, my job is to do any process alignment, any people alignment, and any purpose alignment based on these 3 parameters. I have to consistently perform what I am doing. I have to keep on incrementally improving. These 2 essentially is what a manager should definitely focus on. But as a leader, I need to look at what next. Let us borrow from another guru, Professor Suda of TVS Motors. So Professor Suda, I think he died last year. Brilliant mind. So he talks about any organization, there are 4 levels: operator, supervisor, engineer, and manager. Manager, what he means is a top manager and senior manager. Engineer, what he means is senior manager and middle management. Supervisor is predominantly junior management. Operator is at the next level, operating level. And how do we divide the responsibilities into broadly 3 boxes? Look at this box carefully. What Suda says is, the first box is stability box. Second area is your incremental improvement. And third is breakthrough. Natarajan, please feel free to intercept here. Okay, I know you have worked with him. Okay. in Wheels India, right, Natarajan or Lucas?
No, in Lucas TVS.
Lucas, you worked with him. Okay, you are absolutely lucky and blessed to work with him. So the 3 levels. So if you look at these 3 levels, something very interesting happening here. If you look at it row by row, an operator is supposed to spend around 40-45% of his time in improvement and 50 to 55 to 60% of his time in stability. Supervisor, it is flipped. For a supervisor, 40-45% of his time should be in stability and 50 to 55 to 60% in improvement. For an engineer, around 30-35% in stability, 50 to 60% in improvement, around 10 to 15% in breakthrough. For a manager, top guy, a leader, he has to spend around 10 to 15% in stability, 45 to 50% in improvement, around 30-35% in breakthrough. This is if you look at row by row. If you look at vertically, cutting across all, which box is occupying the maximum area in this? Which is occupying the maximum area in this?
Manager?
No. I'm talking about in terms of the stability, improvement, and breakthrough.
The incremental
Improvement, correct? So almost 45 to 60% of your organization time has to be spent on incremental improvement or improvement. Just answer within yourself, in our organization, does it happen? In our organization, does it happen? Is a very powerful question which should ask.
I don't think so. I don't think so. It happens in any organization.
Correct. Typically, go ahead.
It is not visionary and it has to scale it down to the root level. I don't think so. Say, like if a large organization like Flipkart, Infosys and all, many of them doesn't know what the hell they're doing. If they add any value to the client, customers or the other stakeholders, I don't think so. I don't. It's very.
In fact, if you go to some of the companies like a WAPCO or many of the TVS group companies, you see this actually happening. Okay. Natarajan, you can open up a little bit and talk about that.
Glad to hear that, yeah.
We have a 3-level structure. So first we call it as Kaizen, which is incremental improvement, which happens day in and day out. Second, we call it as quality control circles, where in manufacturing, the basic special cause, root cause analysis we do using 7QC tools. Third level will be at a higher level, where we use statistical tools like DOE, Six Sigma, which is at the assistant manager, deputy manager plus levels, which might happen every 3 months. So definitely Kaizen happens day in and day out. And we split it, stratify it into quality, environment, health and safety, and it happens on a daily basis.
For others' information, Natarajan is the quality head of Wheels India, right, Natarajan?
Yeah, I had corporate quality systems and CSR.
Exactly. Okay. And in TVS group companies, it does happen. But the point here is that most of the organization, you are right. Whoever said the other one, you are right. In most of the organization, it doesn't happen. Why it doesn't happen if you look at carefully? In my opinion, there are 6 things happen for a leader. This is where I want to spend some time on this. Why key leadership is important. Typically, we spend time in firefighting. What do I mean by firefighting? There are typically 5 kinds of fire we fight in organization. Fire number 1, we follow up with others. We don't even consider that as a fire in many organizations. Am I correct? You get 300 mails in a day. How many mails are follow-up mails? Number 2, we follow up with others. Number 2, others follow up with us. Am I correct? Number 3, I seek clarification for things I should know as a routine from my peers, from my subordinates, from my bosses. I seek clarification from others. Number 4, I give clarification to others which they should know as a routine. And number 5, the real fire. If you look at it carefully, the first 4 is not even considered as a fire in many companies. And that eats most of our time.
Unnecessary traffic of exchanges.
Pardon?
Unnecessary traffic, exchange of communications.
Exactly. I follow up, I answer follow up. I give clarification, I seek clarification. And I have real fires. In fact, I don't have time for the real fires. When I'm spending, my time is guzzled by this first 4, firefighting and enhances tremendously.
How good
overcome
it
this
will be? How good it will be if they remove mail communication and make it as a process with work without.
In fact, I heard. Maybe you can check it out in the Google. I heard that Atos Origin as a company has banned emails almost in 2007, 2008.
Wow.
Atos Origin. Just check it out. I'm not fully aware of it. I'm just giving a perspective. I remember reading about that. Atos Origin is an IT company. Okay, maybe your friends are there. You can check with them. I think I remember very clearly they have removed emails somewhere in 2007, 2008.
Sure, will do. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm not sure. It's not a first-hand information, huh? So you should take it with a bag of salt. Okay? Yeah. You can minimize the daily firefighting if you do what is called as a daily routine, a visual daily routine. A visual daily routine, what we call is something like what we call as HCF. Okay, HCF typically. Paneer is there? Paneer Selvam?
Yes.
Your audio is very weak, Paneer. I thought I will open up you and you can talk about that. Okay, never mind. I will supplement that. Typically, what do we discuss in an organization? You can go to Tanishq and have a look at
sir. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Paneer, you can open up. Paneer is head of operation excellence in Tanishq.
Sir.
Okay, he's a TBM assessor as well. Paneer, you can just open up. Sanjay also is around. Is Sanjay is around also, Paneer?
Sir, so HCF actually really helps us
You can explain what is HCF.
ensure the record. So HCF stands for highlights, concerns, and focus. And the way we depict, say, highlights in small letters and concerns maybe in
Your voice is coming broken up, Paneer.
capitals, but small font, and focus that. And we spend very
Paneer,
less
your
time in
voice is
discussing on
cracking.
highlights.
Paneer, your voice is cracking continuously. Don't worry, I will cover it up for you. Don't worry. Okay. Anyway,
Sir, please, sir, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no problem. See, typically what Paneer was talking about here is that in their daily meeting and also in the monthly meeting, if you go to Tanishq, you can see that. You can talk to Paneer offline and then you can seek appointment from him to go and have a look at it. They follow what is called a HCF, highlight, concern, focus. H is in small letter, C is slightly bigger, F is a larger letter. Highlight means historical information, what do you call, which is primarily whatever highlights you are going to talk about. That is not going to be discussed at all. Small letter means you are supposed to spend least time in that one. Concern is where you missed your KPIs, where you missed your initiatives. That if suppose if you're spending 10 minutes in a meeting, 1 or 2 minutes for your highlight, 3 minutes for concern, around 5 minutes for focus. Focus is for future. What comes next? A new collection is coming up. Dhanteras is coming up now. So they'll be having discussion on that. So typically, if you look at any function, you can divide your daily meeting into broadly 3 activities, H, C, and F. So typically as a leader, if I improve my daily routine, especially visual daily routine, my firefighting will come down drastically. Then you have got some time. Now the most important part comes up for a T leader. The released time you have to spend on self-development. What is self-development? Is look at how do my function impact other functions, how other functions impact my function. But make it as a process. It won't happen automatically. How my function impacts other function, how other function impacts my function. I will give a very specific example for this from a friend of mine. His name is GV Kumar. GV Kumar was a sales officer trainee with Godrej. He became the youngest CEO in India at the age of 26 or 27. He became CEO of Godrej Telecom. He's not related to Mr. Godrej, non-promoter CEO. It's a pretty long story how he actually grew up the ladder so fast. You can do a Google search of GV Kumar. GV Kumar is now the MD of a company called Megasoft, okay, in Hyderabad. So GV Kumar did so many things. I'll tell only one thing which GV Kumar did. GV Kumar is a T leader, hardcore T leader. Let me explain how is it. Please remember the time is 1989-90. At that time, internet was not there, mobile was not there, laptop was not there, IT systems were not great. Please remember at that time. When he was his job given to him when he came as a regional sales manager in Mumbai was to reduce the outstanding. Outstanding was outstanding for Godrej. He did a typical root cause analysis. He came to a conclusion. Many reasons he identified. One specific reason is dispatches were delayed, therefore customers are annoyed. For example, my product has to be dispatched to 54 locations of Hindustan Lever. At that time, it's not Unilever, it's called Hindustan Lever. 54 locations of Hindustan Lever. Out of 54 locations, 51 locations my products have gone. But 3 locations my product has not gone. Why it didn't go? Because the dispatch department has not sent it. So what GV did was, he called all the people, he did an offsite outside the office with his HR, with his distribution department and with his own sales department. They had a 2-day offsite. They came up with a lot of perspectives. I will share only one perspective here. They said that they had a very clear understanding how many locations my logistics can reach and how many locations my logistics can reach through outside vehicles. Remember, at that time 3PL was not there. Other than this, my vehicle won't go to any other location. So now I am a salesman. I have this particular list with me. Now I am sitting with the purchase guy in Unilever, Hindustan Lever. I am discussing with him. He says, you need to dispatch to 54 locations. I look at my list and tell him, sir, out of this 54 locations, 47 locations my vehicles will reach, no worries. 4 locations I have to get vehicle from outside. You may have to pay for it, it will cost you extra. 3 locations my vehicles don't reach. Either you can pick up or you tell me the nearest place, I can drop it there. Tell me, if you are a purchase person, you'll be actually pretty pleased to hear this conversation. Am I correct? Instead of somebody promising something over the moon and then not fulfilling it. So what GV did effectively is primarily, he made his salespeople empathize with the dispatch, and he made the dispatch empathize with sales. Self-development is empathizing with other functions. This empathizing with other functions has to start early in the career. But whereas early in the career, I start focusing on my function only and develop some kind of silos. So self-development is a critical third aspect. In fact, many of the firefighting happens because of lack of understanding of other functions. Look at your own career of so many years. We always look back with awe, with respect, those managers who are actually team leaders. Am I correct? Who are able to understand the other functions better. Team development is the next one. When I talk about team development by creating opportunity, the point Natarajan talked about. He talked about multiple things. He talked about quality circles. He talked about what he calls small action groups or that specific improvement initiatives, groups. So, or many of the initiatives done as a group exercise, as a cross-functional team. Am I correct? See, team development is primarily put them in a situation which is going to be not their comfort zone. And how do we create that is what is team development all about. So that and self-development are absolutely interlinked. I am self-developing and I am making my team develop also in that sense. So these are the 2 critical aspects for team leadership. If I do this, like Natarajan said, I have time for Kaizen, daily Kaizen. He says daily Kaizen. Trust me, it is daily Kaizen. I remember the number of WAPCO. WAPCO was originally WAPCO TVS, now it is WAPCO India. Last I met them was in 2014, I think. At that time, number of implemented improvements per person per annum was 63. 63 improvements per person per annum is something phenomenal. That means almost every week people are improving there. Am I correct? There will be some who will be improving 2 improvements in a week also. No exaggeration. In fact, James Omac said, WAPCO India Chennai plant is the leanest plant outside Toyota. It's an amazing compliment. And when I do this, then the real leader emerges when I dream for the future. So if I can summarize this in a very clear perspective, daily firefighting is a red area, eliminated. Daily routine, self-development, team development is part of one specific activity. We'll come to that later. Daily Kaizen is 1, dream for the future is 3rd. If you look at it, we talked about stability, improvement, and breakthrough. Am I correct? This is stability, this is improvement, and this is breakthrough. Stability and improvement is a daily work management. Breakthrough, dream for the future is policy deployment. But the self-development, team development, Kaizen, dream for the future will not happen automatically. Therefore, if you have to develop team leadership in the organization, I have to take it by choice. Let me borrow from Eisenhower. It's called Eisenhower matrix. We have to really classify what is urgent and what is important. Daily firefighting is urgent. Daily routine is also urgent. If you look at it, if it's not important, not urgent, eliminate it. If it is not important but urgent, delegate it to somebody. If it is important but not urgent, then think about that. And finally, do it if it is important and urgent. So you have to really think about how these four can be inculcated into the organizational ethos. And that comes only from empathy. Empathy is aware of this problem, aware of the challenges your other departments have, make them aware of the challenges you have with them, articulate these challenges, and act on these challenges. Being empathetic is being aware, articulated, and acting on it. For that, we have to take not responsibility, we should have a responsibility. Small wrong English, but it is very important. And therefore, what is this team leadership? Remove the silos and look at an integrated approach. An integrated approach, which is primarily starting from anything we do is to gain and retain customers. So how do I look at gaining and retaining customers? And what is the role sales and distribution faces or challenges sales and distribution faces in this whole journey of gaining and retaining customers? And how operations fulfills this particular requirement? And how I am able to integrate with my suppliers and ensure that the customer value is fulfilled? And how do I look at and carry my team along in this whole journey? And how do you look at design as a structural driver? If you look at this question mark, we are given the question mark reverse. So ulta soch karna padega either. Design, when I mean, I'm not talking about product design alone. Design of product, design of process, design of supply chain, design of organization structure.
Dabbawala.
Yeah. Exposure to emerging technologies. So all these things should lead towards discovering hidden profitability drivers. So what we are coming up with is, we are coming up with a very specific modular approach of training somebody to become a team leader. What we call as emerging team leaders. Of course, the left extreme talks about the campus, other extreme talks about the organization. This is not typical campus to corporate I'm talking about here. I'm talking about how do you develop emerging team leaders by making them correlate different domains, integrate with your existing system, and align to the customer and the profitability driver. And if that happens, you live happily ever after. So this is the perspective what we wanted to share with you. We just launched a program called Leadership Series, which is primarily meant for people who are about to become senior leaders. Now we are launching a program called Emerging Team Leaders, which is actually meant for people who are in the corporate situation, but trying to get into a leadership position at the entry level itself, and maybe the first 10 years. This is what our positioning is about. Okay. Now I am open for questions. There are a few questions, I think. One question has come from Sandesh, I think. Yes, Sandesh. Based on functional high performance, there are examples of many who don't possess high functional performance, still occupy CXO's position for the leadership qualities. What is your take on it? I agree with you, Sandesh. But it is more of an exception than a rule, right? Sandesh, are you there? Yeah, it is more of an exception. For example, whenever we talk about education, people always give the example of Dhirubhai Ambani. Am I correct? Dhirubhai, for one Dhirubhai Ambani, we have got tens of thousands of people who have to actually get educated and go up the ladder. You are right. If you are lucky, we can get that. Somebody like a Mike Brierley. I said Mike Brierley as an example. Remember, Sandesh? Mike Brierley is a classic case. He's not a great batsman. Amazing leader. In fact, both of them did extremely well under Mike Brierley. You need somebody like Brierley to control or manage both of them, the real beefy. So there are great leaders like that who may be damn good in that.
Ian Morgan.
Ian Morgan, yeah, to some extent you can say that. Okay, but Brierley is always considered to be an epitome of leadership, right? But not a great batsman, not a great batsman at all. But Sandesh is more of an exception than a rule. Yeah, yeah. I think we have got a few definite leaders also in this group. Please feel free to open up anybody, and you can share your perspective in the whole context of what you've been doing. Feel free. We have a lot of senior people in this group. Feel free to open up and talk.
Hi Hari, this is Sunil Pathak.
Hi Sunil. Sunil is actually heading a company called Sanjay Technoplast. And if James Womack identified WAPCO as the leanest company outside Toyota, the great C. Narasimhan called Sunil Pathak's company as a highly lean company. Sunil, over to you.
Well, thanks for the compliment. I just have one observation on your reference to the Peters principle, wherein you said like everybody rises to the level of incompetence.
Generally.
Okay. Now, my take is a bit different on this. Whether we call that as a level of incompetence or the level of maximum competence. Because when somebody reaches a level of incompetence, then that's a recipe for failure. One is likely to fail there.
True.
So I probably would call that as a level of maximum competence, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you are not wrong. Generally, what happens, Sunil, at that time, we tend to what you call sideline that person. In fact, in Peter Prescription, I said, no, there are three books he talks about. Yes. Peter Principle, Peter Prescription, Peter Pyramid. In Peter Prescription, he gives a very interesting prescription. I'll give a very simple example for that. He says that somebody reaches that level of incompetence, he is actually incompetent there. Okay, then do one thing, you can't demote him. Am I correct?
Correct.
Very difficult, because if you demote him, he will get demotivated. Correct?
Yeah,
so create a new role for him. Okay, Director, Inter-Organizational Correspondence. His job is to collect the fourth copy of all the letters. Okay, don't push him out. Please keep him there.
But that's
yeah, he calls it lateral arabesque. He calls it lateral arabesque. That's the word he uses.
I know. I mean, that's more of a parking place rather than effectively utilizing a person.
So, over a period of time, he himself will leave.
Hari, this is Baiju here.
Hi, Baiju. And Baiju Matthew was a great student of mine. In fact, one guy who always used to pull my leg. Please pull my leg, Baiju.
No, hardly that. See, I'm on the Peter principle only. I tend to agree with the gentleman who spoke just before me. The Peter principle, yes, it is applicable more in closed systems where we are assuming that nobody would be coming in from outside or nobody will be leaving and going. See, one of the issues that I have faced in the various organizations that I have come across is that people overstay. You have a leader, you have that person overstaying, and then there is an aura created around that person. And organizationally, there will be those who are near to the person, and they will create this aura all the more. You know, you can't talk to that person. He's like this, he's like that and all. And that person gets cut off from the feedback system. From the feedback system. I mean, reality, not reality is not so significant. As the feedback system is, then that person doesn't get the feelers from the organization. He will only have yes men, he or she will only have yes men around him or her. And there lies a problem. So the Peter principle, as you said, he had come out with this in the 1950s. Maybe organizations were like that at that time. And those organizations now would have grown, and the people there, they would have been at the leadership position for 10 years, 15 years. Anybody in the leadership organization of the same place for more than 10 years, 15 years, I would consider to be a risk for the organization.
Okay.
My personal experience, probably.
Yeah, I understand that. I will give two perspectives here, which I gathered over years. Okay, Biju? Okay. One perspective is from Jim Collins. When Jim Collins talks about the good to great, and then built to last, right? And great by choice. Okay, I don't remember which one he talks about this. He talks about, it is critical for an organization to nurture their leaders internally. Yeah. Okay, the reason he talks about that more elaborately when he says that of the 80% of the companies whom we have gone through, the good to great typically, they all have homegrown leaders. This is one very interesting perspective what he talks about. That's
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Yeah, thanks, Venkat. Okay, Dr. Venkatesh category. Okay, and there's another perspective I want to share here, Baiju, is that, is this Ramcharan, Professor Ramcharan, right? I had a very accidental meeting with Ramcharan in Dubai airport lounge. I have a habit, Venkatesh knows it very well, my colleague. I normally go to the airport much before even the aircraft arrives and then ensure everything is cleaned in the airport and kept ready for the aircraft to come. Okay? I never take a chance of going late. Okay? Fortunately, one such occasion, I was almost 4.5 hours ahead of time. I was in the lounge, accidental meeting with Ramcharan. At that time, I was asking the same question what you asked. Is it logical to bring people from outside or inside? He said, there's no question of logic or no logic here. Both are applicable. It is always better to see whether you can have a homegrown leader. But the people from outside are required broadly for 3 purposes. One purpose is where you want to totally change the organizational direction. You need people from outside. 2, you don't have leaders at all in this particular domain. You need somebody from outside for that. 3rd is you are going for something absolutely new, which requires a different mindset than the kind of mindset what you carry. You have to have people from outside. Okay, so it's not a question of alone the closed organization. You are right. 1950s were more closed organization. Even now, if you look at Baiju, many organizations are closed organizations. Am I correct?
Absolutely, and that is the issue.
Yeah.
Especially family-driven business.
Yes,
not just that. I mean, a professional who's there feels so comfortable that, and that person will start keeping information to himself or herself, not sharing it with others, because that information is power, and that comes at a cost to the organization.
So
that comfort has to be challenged of the employees and of the organization.
Yes, the irony is the leader failed to create a leader.
No,
absolutely.
If you look at Hindustan Unilever, I mean, they have never had, there was no dearth of leadership in their organization because meritocracy or whatever you call it, they always groom leaders and it's a CEO factory, virtual CEO factory. So,
yeah, see,
absolutely correct. Baiju, I'll just slightly to interrupt here. I will bring in Brenda Mendes here because she has been working with the leaders in Unilever for long 30-35 years. Brenda, please open up.
Yeah, you're very right when you say that. To the extent that I will say that even if you were the chairman's son, you would not get into this company. And while I was there, I have actually seen 2 chairman's sons fail in the interviews. Okay, so meritocracy is absolutely at the heart of Unilever, and that's what makes people really, kind of work with them. Another thing is, I really think that what sets this company apart is the fact its value system. That's what really sets it apart. Because if I stayed there for 32 years, and often people would ask me why, when the country first opened out, when liberalization came, everybody would come to HUL and meet, the new people coming in, whether it was McKinsey or Kellogg's or whoever, and meet them. They say, would you like to join us? We don't mind giving you, twice your salary. But my one answer was, this one reason. In this company, I'm sure I will never have to do anything professionally which I would not want to do personally. Bottom line. And I think
Brenda.
that kind of attitude, really helps.
Thanks, Brenda. Thank you so much. In fact, Jay Kumar is adding one more perspective. We're talking about, this one key point I'm also talking about. One of the ways of creating team leaders within an organization would be to move people around departments, expose them to various functions early in their careers. So the key point here is that this is what Unilever does effectively, of moving around the people across departments. You find somebody who is not from that function going to some other function also, especially the first 18 months of that training. But Baiju, your point is very interesting because, it does happen that at times, is it stability or is it stagnancy, right?
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, stability or stagnancy. At times, that's what at times we are not able to clarify. We are not able to get that clarity also at times. But like Jaykumar says, it is critical for us to keep that rotation happening. Yeah. Okay. Good conversation. Any other perspective? Please feel free to open up.
I recently read an article on the demise of GE as one of the valuable companies. I mean, last year they were out of the Dow Jones Index. And incidentally, we had a case study on, what Jack Welch was a great leader during his 80s and 90s. And today when we look at it, I mean, it was totally against the human resources system that, he used to chuck down always rate the top 10 or on a 1 to 10. And the lowermost 10% used to be chucked away. So the managers were always in a state of some sort of a fear or something. And eventually today it is no more a company that people talk about. And there's a book that has come on the downfall.
Okay.
So
Venkatesh actually, Venkatesh.
Natarajan wants to add something.
Oh yeah, please, Natarajan, open up.
Yeah, Hari, Natarajan here. So there are 4 perspectives.
Natarajan, if you can show your video, that will be great. Yeah, please. If you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, there are 4 perspectives. First perspective from my side. So I am the most incompetent leader in my organization. So as head of corporate quality, CSR and systems. So, but I'm taking in more roles. I'm going to take a bit of R&D systems as well as CSR. So I work very closely with my boss, who is the managing director, who is the great grandson of TVS. So I have a lot of regards for him, and he is a very humane person, and he has been into CSR for the last 15 years. So that is point number 1. Point number 2, from our organization's perspective, we work on a 3C, 5P approach: customer focus, competition, and cost being the top of the pyramid. And to achieve these 3, we work on profit, product, process, plant, and people. Profit, we are following the McKinsey structure. We have been working on the McKinsey structure for the last 6 years. So we have a clear-cut structure. There is a clear cost plus your reviews based on the cost, profit. For product, we work based on the ISO-based systems, ISO 9000-based systems. For the processes, we work based on the automotive-based systems, which we call it as IATF QMS, and plus the ISO 14001-based systems, which is more related to the environment as well as the processes, so that the processes are in place. So that is the process. And 4th is related to the plant, where we follow TPM. For the last 11 years, we have a 9-pillar TPM-based approach, including 5S. Last but not the least, people-based systems. We have the 360 degrees people focus. In fact, I was also evaluated for a 360 degrees focus, where I found the gaps based on how I need to improve. Plus, we also have the health and safety-based systems for the people. Plus, of course, the Kaizens, the QCCs, and the QATs, and the Six Sigma approaches for the people. So this is the 3C, 5P-based systems, what we follow from the manufacturing automotive-based approach. The 3rd is from the basic overall system perspective. As you clearly put it down, stability, capability, capacity, quality performance, and delivery performance, all the 5 are important. So what it means is, stability is being the ICU. So once you come out of the ICU, you move from being unstable to being stable. So you come to the general ward. So you have more capability. From capability, you come home, you have the capacity to do work. From home, you move to your factory, to your workplace, which is your quality performance. Then finally is delivery performance. You meet the customer with gutso, take them by the bull by its horns. So this is from the system perspective. We need to move from stability to capability to capacity to quality performance, delivery performance. On a lighter vein, so 5 things come into play. So 1 is truth, 2nd is fact, 3rd is half truth, 4th is white lie, 5th is black lie. So all the 5 are required for a human being. So you need to balance between all these 5. So what is truth, what is fact, what is half truth, what is black lie, what is white lie. So 5 people come to the picture here. 1 is your conscience, 2nd is your customer, 3rd is your spouse, 4th is your other departments, and fifth is the other people who are around. So we need to balance between all these five from the philosophical perspective. Thanks.
Natarajan, you remind my inspiration for 41 years now, yeah, seriously. Thank you so much.
So just to close, I was Hari's classmate in school. Thanks.
Sometimes this lie is not it's termed not a lie, but being economical with the truth, you know. So.
Yeah, it is a euphemism which is used conveniently.
But Harisa, I want to ask you one last thing. All you said has been so engaging, and you know something that I've been able to relate to. But in do you think that what has happened in the last 7 months and what is maybe is ahead in the next 24 months, will that bring any fundamental change to what leadership was? Like he mentioned about Jack Welch. Today there are hundreds of studies saying that sort of not criticizing him but decrying what he did, and there are certain aspects of leadership which are coming into, because people in the new scenario will have to be given the freedom to fail. And if that's going to be there, the leadership, the leader himself has to certainly be willing to be vulnerable. How many of our leaders will be willing to be vulnerable? I don't know.
Whether the leader is willing to be vulnerable or not, frankly, even I don't know either. But the point is, leadership by its very nature has to be gutsy. A leader has to have that mindset of having the basic courage to change things. That's what I said, as a manager, I'm more comfortable with things being stable. As a leader, I always start looking at how do I change the situation and create changing out of my comfort zones consistently. That's what a leader is supposed to do in a way. A good leader is supposed to do. So one critical statement I always look at, for anybody to actually grow in their perspective in their life. This is a very inspiring statement which I saw in Emirates Airlines tagline, which later on I realized it is a quotation by John Maxwell. When is the last time we did something for the first time? When is the last time we did something for the first time is critical for a leader. A leader has to have that thing of ensuring that he is able to do that. So when an organization is brought in, you need somebody to bring in that organizational change. That's where what Baiju said also becomes critical. When I need that change to happen, maybe I require an external force to come in as well. Quite possible. So in the current context of this, if you look at it, we are moving more and more towards trying to get the stability in place, which is very difficult in the current context. And if you look at somebody like a Deloitte is telling now we are going to go totally into work from home now. It's an amazing perspective. Many companies maybe start doing towards a hybrid model. The things are going to change because nobody who saw the 1918, Spanish flu was consciously alive today to talk about that. Because they may not be knowing that at that age of 6 or 7 if they are 110 now. Correct? So this is absolutely new for all of us. And we are trying to grapple. And if you find everybody is trying to come up with something which is new. Okay, so that is definitely happening.
Arisa, Maxwell yesterday put a quote out because he sends me one every day. And yesterday his quote was, there can be no improvement without change.
Okay.
He was just...
Thank you.
Something like that. There can be no improvement without change.
Thanks for the real good interaction with people. Anybody else wants to open up, please? We have quite a few.
Prakash here.
Prakash, just open up your video if it is possible.
Well, I just logged out of my office.
Never mind. Go ahead, Prakash. Go ahead, Prakash.
It's a perspective what I'm trying to really share. I think your thing on G.V. Kumar, the example, whatever you said on empathizing, I think it is... I've got some live examples where probably this is supporting your statement on that.
Hey, Prakash is from Reliance Retail.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So in the 90s, when Raj Jain was heading Whirlpool, okay, so the elevation to the leadership does not really come free of cost, okay? It's not performance alone.
people should have spent at least 3 or 4 major departments, because we call it job rotation, but then job rotation in certain organizations not rightfully done the way it should be done. Because somebody said parking lot or whatever it is. Yes, in most of the organization, job rotation is nothing but a parking lot. But then here, sincerely it happens. A sales guy heading service, a service guy heading logistics. It's all a totally unrelated field. But then I think probably supporting your statement is bringing empathy. That unless you spend about 2 years or 3 years there, you cannot really get into the nuances of the difficulties experienced by this thing. I think I support that statement of yours, point number 1. And point number 2 is, somewhere reaching the level of incompetence. See, it's a yes and a no kind of a thing, because at some point of time I've been involved with the Geo thing here at the mobility. Somewhere, the entire leadership team, you will not believe, to start with, okay? We're all guys who had put in the Jamnagar plant, okay? The entire leadership, okay? All these guys probably would have, if it is all elevation or incompetency or what, I did not really know that. They don't know anything on telecom. But the way they sliced and diced the market, they went about execution. See, the execution was the key there, okay? The way they went about this thing, I think probably that supporting that statement of reaching a height of level of incompetency, I did not really see in them. In fact, when we interacted with them, we knew how to really go about an execution of mega projects of this kind. So this is where I'm just slightly differing from your viewpoint. But then, okay, this happens. Whatever you said, that happens. We carry baggage. We tend to do a work which is one step lower than whatever we've been doing. That this is all part and parcel. It's all in most of the organization that holds good, truly. Yep. Yeah.
Thanks, Prakash. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks for your input.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
I think we had a good discussion. Over to you, Venkatesh.
Thank you very much. I think we had very wonderful discussion today. As I said, this is the thing, what we thought, creating this empathy in a systematic manner is what we are looking at. As what Hari was telling, we have come out with one program. So what I think that we have also learned, over a period, we never thought that we can do consulting through remote, which we have learned through this, because of this pandemic. At the same time, when we are doing something like this, we thought we'll come out with some of new things. One of the things that what we have come out with was the Masterclass Leadership Series, which is really doing well. We have started it last week. Now we are going to come out with somebody. See, I look at it primarily, there are 3 decades of corporate life for anybody. The first decade is where you emerge. The last decade is where you go to the leadership position. But beyond the 3rd decade, what you do is you go on a self-propelling mode. You don't require anything. So we have addressed these 2, and the middle level is where people need to reinvent themselves. This is what Hari was telling about, when people are there and they have done a lot now. Over a period, what they have started doing is they have started doing the way in which that they were doing more of compliance, not coming to the office, doing the compliance, moving back. How can we reinvent themselves? That's another thing that we are thinking of. This particular thing that what we are focusing is on emerging guys who are in the first decade of their corporate life, so that they can skip the 2nd decade and go to the 3rd decade directly. So looking forward, hopefully that we'll be in a position to change ways of some of the people. Hopefully that we will do.
Please open up the